Hello and welcome back to Zoe's Tropes. It's February, but I did want to do a video telling you what my favorite books of 2023 were. I looked through my storygraph stats for 2023 and they were pretty funny. It was mostly reflective, emotional, and dark books. I don't think that I read that many intense dark books, but according to the stats, I do. They were mostly medium paced, mostly short, under 300 pages, and I got 2/3 of it being fiction, 1/3 being nonfiction. I think they do group poetry in with nonfiction. I do usually think of poetry, fiction, nonfiction as very separate categories, so to group poetry in with nonfiction feels a little weird to me, but it was a very fiction-heavy year. I did read a lot of novels, and that was great. I read some really good novels, as you're about to see. And in terms of genre, literary by far was my top genre, and followed, I think, kind of all at the same time by LGBTQIA+, poetry, and memoir. So no big surprises to me, but if you wanted to get a sense of what I'm working with as my 63 books. Those were my interesting stats, I think. So here are my top 10 books that I read in 2023. There's no order to them. I'm not ranking, I don't think I have a best book of the year. And looking at this stack, I don't know that one really stands out. So yeah, it's in the order that I pulled them off of my shelves. Also, what makes a best book of the year? There are a lot of books that I read that I can recognize are very good books, like capital G, good book, TM, trademark. But even if they were really good, they might not have really stuck with me. Some books I'll be like, oh wow, that was really great. Close the cover and just never think about it again. So those are not the books that made it onto this list. The ones that made it onto the list are books that stuck with me in a way, whether I'm thinking about the characters or scenes or the prose, or if reading it, the experience was just so moving. I find myself very much of the mind that if a piece of media makes you feel something strong, then it is doing, it's working, it's good. And so yeah, that's what we've got here, of books that made me feel things, and books that just, yeah, and books that moved me in a way. None of them made me moved in a bad way. I mean, I guess the one on cannibalism, I don't really feel like making a worst books of the year list, just because I didn't read that many that were not good in an entertaining way. I feel like it would just sort of be books that didn't do much for me. So that I feel like wouldn't be very interesting this year, but you know, maybe next year. For now, it's the top 10. All right, first up, also one of my top contenders for best cover is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. It's a novel, and this is the one about the cannibal. This one was super fun. I remember kind of wanting to slow down while I was reading it. I found that I was reading it too quickly. I wanted to savor it a little bit more. It's not a very long book, but you know, there's a lot that goes on in it. So in this book, we followed Dorothy, who is a beautiful woman. She's a food critic. She's very smart, very well educated. And yeah, so she loves food, but she also loves sex. And what she frequently finds herself doing is consuming men in a kind of unconventional way. She may eat the men that she has sex with. So that part of it is very fun. There's, you know, no holds barred. It's a very elaborately written, ornate prose, enjoyable read in that sense. One of my favorite TV shows is Hannibal. It's one of my favorite shows because it makes that kind of disgusting cannibal element beautiful And so it's that touch of the sublime, that touch of not liking that you really want to eat that thing that you know is human meat. The way that some of the meat was described in this, I felt hungry. It's just beautifully written and super gross and kind of a blast. Okay, next up I've got Swallowing by Jason Purcell. This was published by Arsenal Pulp Press, which is an independent Canadian press. It's part poetry, part memoir about having, about being ill, about having chronic illness, and about what the sick queer body is. And I was reading this during a time of pretty bad back pain too. I think that just added to the whole experience of reading it of, oh, I'm here right now in this poem. Jason does beautiful things with metaphor and form. Okay, I'm gonna read. I want to start doing this of if I'm presenting a poetry book, read a couple of lines from it. I think that could be fun. So I'm going to read from Magpie. One magpie rustles in the shine, wet bacteria between my skin and clean shirt, the space between concealment and nudity, the lives I'm carrying on my chest. I can't see, a corner hesitant along Jasper Avenue, long time to wait in the summer dust, full patios blooming with car exhaust, gravel in the teeth, through the cracks are more cracks, and the threat of your tongue claws at your bad genes. It's just so, there's so much momentum in these poems. And yeah, like I said, beautiful language. This one really hit. Another Canadian author, Marlo Granados, her book Happy Hour. This is weirdly not the Canadian edition. This is the Verso Books edition from the States, but was originally published by Flying Books in Toronto. I wish I had read it in the summer. I don't think I did. I think I read it just before the summer, but it's set during a summer heat wave in New York. These two young women, go to New York with no money and just try to get by, like hustling, selling old clothes, and attending parties where people buy them fancy drinks. This book really got me into the French 75 cocktail, and makes me feel very fancy. But yeah, these characters are so fun. And this is a book where, I guess it's one of those like books where not a lot happens, but you still follow these characters on their journey toward finding themselves. And it was just a really fun read. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. I really like Marlo Granados. I love her Substack. I love her Instagram. I can't wait to see what she writes next. But yeah, I just had a blast reading this. And when friends are asking for like a cool, fun read, this is the one that I recommend. All right, next up is a modern classic, Maggie Nelson's Bluets. This is a collection of poems and essays, mostly by Maggie Nelson, all about the color blue. And this is one of those books where I want to underline every single line to the point where the annotations are useless. I guess it's a long list poem. Each paragraph is a different number. And so I will read you, this is 193. I will admit, however, upon considering the matter further, that writing does do something to one's memory, that at times it can have the effect of an album of childhood photographs, in which each image replaces the memory it aimed to preserve. Perhaps this is why I'm avoiding writing about too many specific blue things. I don't want to displace my memories of them, nor embalm them, nor exalt them. In fact, I think I would like it best if my writing could empty me further of them, so that I might become a better vessel for new blue things. For me, hardcover poetry books do freak me out a little. I only have a couple. But yeah, Couplets by Maggie Milner, being one of them. It's a novel in verse. So it's, a book of poetry, but there's a narrative to it. So yeah, Couplets is about this woman who's in a relationship with a man, and she's thinking about exploring her desire for women. All of the, it's all in couplets, so in kind of stanzas of 2 lines. That is why it is called couplets, one of the reasons. There are some like longer bits, but for the most part, they're all separated into the 2-line stanzas. So this is section 3, poem 3. So much from childhood was perfectly preserved in her. The habits of hyperbole and spilling food, the love of pranks, the madcap laugh, the tendencies to overshare and nap most days. She always wanted to be touched, was indiscriminate with trust, and seemed incapable of ever telling time. I found it all incredibly compelling. All right, next one was Piranesi by Susanna Clark. This was so cool. So we follow this guy, Piranesi, who is basically the only person who lives in this world, and it's how he's naming things and identifying things and how he treats things that he doesn't understand. And I remember I heard a lot of people talking about this and saying, you know, the beginning is really tough to get through, and then it starts to make sense, and you don't want to give away the twist. And usually that is a red flag for me. But for this one, I did persevere, and people were right. It is very good and worth kind of wrapping your head around those first few chapters as you kind of get into Piranesi's voice. Beautiful prose. I mean, that for me, that is kind of a necessity for it being a book that I really enjoy, is the prose has to be strong. But Susanna Clark is a beautiful writer. I was just very excited about this world and about this character, and as we understood more of what was happening and what he was going through, I was just fully captivated, and it was great. Great if you're into genre fiction, great if you're not. If you like a little bit of that dark academia vibe, you've got some of that here too, a little bit of a mystery. So next is A History of My Brief Body by Billy Ray Belcourt. This is a memoir with beautiful, beautiful writing. It's about his life growing up as an Indigenous queer man. He weaves in a lot of cultural theory, so like queer theory and anti-racist theory, Marxist theory, in a way that is still very accessible while not sort of taking the time to hold your hand through it. A lot of it is about like how to love and how to love from the margins. Language and gesture are too open to appropriation, too prone to misuse, so I have nowhere or nothing with which to do the deeply human work of self-making. My first territory of desire is the territory of me. We are without a flesh to signal our futurity, overwrought by signification in the no man's land of a wild imaginary. Lately, however, I want to hunt memory, to sink my teeth into it, to transform it into a gangly creature I might terrorize. I mean, any dirt road out of the wilderness of my body is so ridden with potholes it is undrivable. Billy Ray Belcourt, I will read anything. This one was a bit of a surprise. Landscapes by Christine Lay. I didn't know anything about this, had never heard of it. Actually, still haven't really heard anyone talk much about it, but it kind of blew me away. It's, first of all, can we look at this cover? Stunning. Okay, so this is a novel. It is about a woman who is an archivist. She is in charge of archiving the art and objects in this old English country house. Important context, this is in a near future where even the English countryside is devastated by drought and heat, and the country house is literally falling apart. However, it is one of the last remaining intact buildings, and so people are going there for shelter while she's trying to catalog all of the art. And they've sold a lot of their really valuable art to help keep the country house standing. And also, 20 years ago, she was in a relationship with her now partner's brother, and that brother sexually assaulted her, and he is on his way to join them at the country house. All of that, like, what sounds like a lot of plot, we don't really see very much of it. What we mostly see is her reflections on what the meaning of art is, what it's like to be kind of part of this ecological elegy, what memory does, what ruin is. It's so good, so beautifully designed too. And yeah, this is by a Canadian author. It's, I think, her debut novel. This is one where I'm like, I need your next book, and I need it yesterday. Next up, Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. I thought it was really cool. It's a book within a book. So this is a novel, but it is presented to us as a biography, the biography of X. Who's X? X is a multidisciplinary artist, thinker who has died, who's writing the biography. The biography is written by her wife. And the whole thing is set in an alternate reality where I think like mid-century after World War II, the US was divided into multiple territories, including the southern territories, which is now like a fascist theocracy. No one can go in and out. And this book is mostly set like outside of the southern territories, but we do get some insight into what is going on behind closed doors there. And it's about, yeah, it's this investigation by X's wife into who X was, and she finds that she didn't really know her wife that well at all. And it's about like overcoming those feelings, like what does it mean to learn those things about someone who's died, who's very close to you, and yeah, how to cope with that grief while also being angry and feeling betrayed. There's a lot in here about like, what is art? What is the artist's role? And it was so cool. And there's just like fictional quotes by real theorists and real writers and real famous artists, but they're like made up, like they're about X, but X is in our world. So well done. Like as a concept, it's very cool, but then in execution, it worked, which is not that common. Okay, last one. I may have hurt my back picking this up just now. This is Fane by Anne-Marie MacDonald, Canadian author, Quebec-based author. And I've met her and she was very nice. And this was incredible. This was another one like Landscapes. I hadn't heard much about it when I first saw the cover in bookstores. Was intrigued by the cover, looked at the dust jacket, went, oh my god, I feel seen, and got around to reading it and was so pleasantly surprised. So it is 700 pages. I read the first 200 pages across like a month. It was one of those that just sat on my coffee table and I would read a few pages at a time, you know, as you do. And then at one point I sat down to read for the evening and I started reading and I didn't stop. I read the rest of the book, 500 pages of the book, just in one frenzy. So like I started reading at, 7 p.m. I was making dinner. Then I just kept going. I stayed up until like 4 in the morning. I had like a couple hundred pages left, decided like maybe I should take a pause, slept, woke up the next day, and just finished it. And I was just in this whole other world because I'd found a book that I'd never read anything quite like before. So, okay, let me actually tell you what it's about. So we're in the 19th century. We are on the border of England and Scotland. Fane is a country house right on the border of England and Scotland. And there lives a young girl named Charlotte. Charlotte is the daughter of, like, the lord of the house. Yeah. And she doesn't go, she's very, very smart, but she doesn't go out into town. She says she has this condition. Is it a medical condition? Is she sick? What's going on? We don't quite know. And we just follow her journey, and we follow her journey toward getting educated, trying to get out of Fane, and trying to discover like what this condition is. And there's like twists and turns, like very Dickensian plot twists. So it's written from the voice of Charlotte, and Charlotte has a very, I guess, to our ears, kind of antiquated voice, but also the voice of a child. So I thought that was just magnificently done. So those are my 10 books that I really, really loved in 2023. A lot of experiments with form is what I'm seeing. Weirdly, a lot of new releases. I don't usually read books that came out this year unless I'm really sure that I'm really gonna love it and it's worth moving up the queue. These all turned out to be worth it. I had a blast in 2023, hoping the same for 2024. Let me know what your top 10 were. If you've read any of these, if you disagree with me, if you do agree with me. Yeah. So I'll see you next time. Hope this was fun. Talk to you later.